Hold on to your butts.
Da-da-da.
Boop.
Welcome to episode 76 of the Civil War Breakfast Club podcast, joined once again by my co-host Mary, the only woman in history to watch a silent movie and wonder if she'd gone deaf. I'm only a grainy and white, pasty-faced video named Darren. Hello, Mary.
Oh my God.
How are you?
I'm good. Well, I guess we can start off by telling our listeners that we watched Buster Keaton in the General the other night, a silent movie from 1926.
Darren, is your audio wrong? Is there something wrong with your audio? I can't hear anything. Why are these words coming across the screen? This is so weird. Oh my God, it's so weird. Anyway, yeah, we watched that movie. It was a good movie.
It was really good, and I was doing some research about it afterwards. It's apparently now considered one of the best movies ever made.
It was.
And I don't know, I loved it. It was a great story, great music.
Buster Keaton did this a lot.
Yeah, and you know what I love about him is just the face he has on. It looks like someone just asked, like someone was like, "Can you please drive me to the airport?"
That's the face I just made that you just ignored.
Talking more about his scowl that he has on his face.
Oh, hey, speaking of scowls, how's your Tuesday going?
Tuesday, we're at Thursday, although it does feel like Tuesday.
Every day's Grumpy Mary's. We call it Tuesday. Well, I'll leave that alone. But in any case.
Fucker. Anyway, to our listeners, if you have a chance, watch The General. You can find it on YouTube. There's different versions of it. But I think we're going to get into our episode. And I don't want to take over hosting duties from our amazing host tonight, Darren.
Oh, that's right. I'm the host. So you keep quiet as I do this here, okay? Let's just like Buster Keaton. All right. Anyway, so what are you drinking tonight, Mary?
I am drinking Plutonian Sky, made by Monocacy Brewing Company, which is in Frederick, Maryland. And you and I were able to get there a few weeks ago. It's an amazing brewery, and it's not far from the battlefield. So if you all find yourself visiting Monocacy Battlefield, go to Monocacy Brewing. It's a really cool place. They have some great beers, and usually they have a food truck there too on Saturdays as well.
Go to the battlefield, grab yourself a hoodie. You won't regret it.
Yes. Anyway, thanks. Get a hoodie.
Yeah. Anyway, well, since you didn't ask,
I was about to. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking Out of Focus IPA, which is from our friends at the ABC Appalachian Brewing Company on Gettysburg over there on Steinware. We were there as well. So we did a little beer adventure a few weeks ago. We grabbed a whole bunch of beers to bring home. So
I think we need to talk about our mugs too, because I think we both have the same person on our mugs.
Oh, that's a good call. Good call. See, this is why you need to host more. Go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah, I have Uncle Blingy. Okay. General Sherman. Can't see it. I Dream of a Brighter Atlanta.
And I've got Sherman as well. It says Die Mad. Sherman is sort of quasi part of this. It is a tangential little line. He, as of course we talked about the Battle of Okolona, Mary, February 22nd, 1864. Little spills a couple days before that too. Yeah. But this is basically the tail end of the Meridian Campaign. So we talk a lot about a lot of important battles, right? That could overshadow, right? Especially cavalry battles, and Okolona is certainly one that does fall into that category. It's not as famous as some of the other cavalry battles, like the Battle of Brady Station or Yellow Tavern, those type of things. But what this one really does, it cements the legacy of one guy and dooms another. Mm-hmm. It cements the legacy of Nathan Bedford Forrest, who we're going to talk about tonight, and dooms another of William Suey Smith.
Yeah, for Suey Smith is for various reasons, though, that he gets not very good at the end of this battle.
He does, and I don't want to give away the ending, so don't get mad at me giving away the ending here. But this is going to be a hammer and nail Confederate victory. Yep. In my opinion, it's going to be Forrest's greatest moment in the Civil War. I would agree. That's just my opinion, not facts. That's just my opinion. This is a guy who was outnumbered 3-1 in this battle. And what he did was put a real cramp in the dick of the Union Army in this Meridian Campaign.
I love how you put that.
That's what he did, though, right?
Yep.
To get the details on this one, we have to go back in time. You know what I mean?
If I could turn back time. I haven't sang in a while.
I know. It's been fantastic. Speaking of silent movies.
Well, we could just play the Back to the Future theme, the da-da-da, and I can't do it.
How about the sound of silence? That's a good one. Okay. Anyway, right over your head. But we'll come back and we'll
Sound of
talk.
silence.
No, you missed the point completely. But in any case, but we got to talk about the fallout that came out of Chattanooga as to why the Union found themselves in Mississippi in February of 1864 as part of that William T. Sherman's Meridian
Hmm.
Campaign. Or really what it was that test run to his March to the Sea
Yep.
that would happen later.
Yep. That's exactly
Right?
what it. Pardon? Yes. Right.
Right?
Right.
Right?
Right.
But so let's go back real quick. So in November of 1863 at Chattanooga, Braxton Bragg, okay, that fun lover we've talked about many, many times, and his Army of Tennessee is going to throw away a solid victory at Chickamauga,
Hmm.
thanks to several factors that we've discussed in the past. We're not going to
Yep.
go into that whole thing again, but the fallout of this battle will be one that will change the landscape of Bragg's army for the rest of the war. It will directly lead to Sherman's Meridian Campaign that's going to take place in early of February 1864, right?
Yep. It
Now,
does.
big picture, the Rebs, they got 99 problems, okay? They really have two big ones going on at this time. The first problem they have following the Battle of Chattanooga is that consistent problem of manpower in
Hmm.
Tennessee and Mississippi, okay? Ain't got enough guys, okay?
Yep.
Since the since the Battle of Fort Donelson in February 1862, they lost an amazing 145,000 casualties. That's how many guys they
Yeah.
lost.
They're basically
Okay.
bleeding men. Like.
Or as my father would say, a shit ton. That's the phrase
That's
he would
actually
use.
what my
Okay.
dad would say too,
Okay,
probably.
must be an old man thing. But before we so that's a big problem. Before we talk about Okolona, though, it is important to discuss how Nathan Bedford Forrest got there
Yep.
because we got to talk a lot about his recruiting and how he trained this army. But before we get to that, the other problem we talked about in this area, because we got to hit these two big problems: a manpower problem, and the other one is the lack of manpower in that crucial area of a place called the Mississippi Prairie.
Yep.
Now, this was the breadbasket of Mississippi. It
Hmm.
had the livestock, the corn, the ho-hos, all the stuff you need a growing boy
The ding
needed in that
dongs.
area, the ding dongs. But the Union presence in Chattanooga
Yep.
in that shrinking number of Rebs made this area extremely vulnerable to a Union attack.
And like, Forrest and Bragg have that kind of falling out, and that post Chickamauga, and that's how he gets to being where he is, because it's basically one of these things where we are not working with each other anymore at all, and we
No,
can't.
the whole thing's fallen apart. So, to defend this area, which became a real urgency for Jefferson Davis, he's going to put a guy named Stephen Dill Lee, we've talked many, many times,
Yep.
in charge to defend this area, and he's going to become the commander of northern Mississippi. Stephen Dill Lee will move his command to a town called Okolona, Mississippi, and set up his headquarters there. Okay, so they're moving the chess pieces on the board here, right? When Davis asked Stephen Dill Lee to take this post, okay,
Yep.
he asked Stephen D. Lee to give him a wish list. Just what do you want? Tell me what you want. I'll try to hook you up. He requested a bunch of things. Okay, he wanted the usual stuff: arms and men, and Rosewood's clown, all the stuff that they're going to need, right? But he really needed somebody, an officer, that's going to increase morale and fire up these troops. Because don't forget, they had just got whipped at Chattanooga. There was all kinds of bad news coming for the Confederacy.
Yep.
They needed somebody. And what Lee asked for specifically was he wanted Nathan Bedford Forrest to help his defense of the Mississippi Prairie.
Yep.
And I know where you're going to go with this for a sec. There's a problem, though. There's a problem, Mary, a problem. Okay.
There is.
The problem is Forrest at this time was part of Braxton Bragg's Army of Tennessee. But fortunately for Stephen D. Lee, Forrest, like many of the people under Bragg at the time, wanted to GTFO away from Braxton Bragg.
He did. So, yeah, September 28th, Forrest receives orders to turn over his command to Wheeler and take a 10-day furlough. Part of his command to Wheeler, he has to take a 10-day furlough. This is post Chickamauga. October 3rd, he gets an order from Bragg. The general commanding desires that you will without delay turn over the troops of your command previously ordered to Major General Wheeler. So all of his command. Wheeler and Forrest do not get along. Bragg and Forrest do not like each other. This is one of these mean girl situations in the Civil War that we've seen many times. But, like I said in our episodes about Chickamauga and Chattanooga, the Army of Tennessee at this point has more drama than an episode of Dallas. And it's got about probably as much intrigue as well. But Forrest is basically holds out his F this card. He takes it quite personally that Bragg is doing this to him. We really don't know what happened. I don't think we ever will. But there is there is a letter apparently out there that may or may not have been sent to Bragg. These things that Forrest said may or may not have been said in person. We don't know. Either way, Forrest is not happy, and he definitely at some point speaks his mind, and someone probably writes it down, and he basically ends the thing by telling Bragg not to come near him again, or else it'll be at the peril of his life. But Forrest ends up leaving Army of Tennessee, which is exactly what Braxton Bragg wants, which is exactly what Nathan Bedford Forrest wants, and which is exactly what Stephen D. Lee wants. But Forrest does not get the command that he wants. He's actually not given all the troops that he needs for this.
And it's funny you mentioned that the whole thing. There's all kinds of urban myths about what happens, but suffice it to say, Forrest doesn't like him. Let's just leave it at that. Whether he wrote a letter, sent a smoke signal, went on the TV show and phoned a friend, whatever the hell he did not like Bragg, and he wanted to get out. Now, Forrest, you mentioned before, but I mentioned before, third person here. He was someone who the troops liked because he was fired up. Forrest, he's gonna write to Captain John Morton, 1864. He's gonna write, John, there is no doubt we could wipe old Sherman off the earth if they gave me enough men and enough guns. Okay. So this is a guy, and we talk a lot about the Sherman Forrest thing, but this is a guy that Sherman was someone, he exuded confidence in his guys, right? So basically, October 1863 that you were just talking about, Davis is going to notify Nathan Bedford Forrest that he wants to meet with him in Montgomery, Alabama, right? And they want to discuss their future. Sit down, son. What's on your mind? What do you like to talk about right here?
I don't want to be with fucking Bragg anymore, Dad.
Don't make me go with him. Seriously.
It's like siblings fighting.
Right? But October 27th, 1863, this meeting is going to happen. What's interesting about that day, Mary, October 27th, okay, is this is the same day that a lot of other things are going on in Western Tennessee, which is kind of foreshadowing of what's going to happen later. Enter a farmer named Colonel Tyrell Bell. Tyree Bell. We're going to talk about him in more detail later, but at this time he's recruiting this big army behind enemy lines. At the same day he's meeting that Davis is meeting with Forrest, and we just hint at this because it's going to come out later on a little bit later. But at this meeting with Davis and Forrest, the rebel president is going to ask Davis if he wants to work with Stephen D. Lee. Forrest probably almost concussed himself nodding so hard. Right? So he's going to do it. But what you just said before, Davis is going to go tell Bragg that he's taken Forrest, and Bragg is going to agree to release him. But he's going to say, I'm only going to let him take 300 guys. That's
he still gives part, right? And that's not like to help Bragg out leading into what's going to be the battles for Chattanooga in November.
Well, don't forget that he's still with the manpower issue too.
So but he wants to take a slight at Forrest because he saw Forrest as being this kind of like gallant cavalry guy who was like kind of like Jeb Stuart getting his names in the paper, so to speak. But Wheeler was like, I think, his little like lapdog, like Bragg's lapdog in some ways, and he just kind of did what Bragg told him to do.
Well, you get two alpha dogs, a guy like Forrest, who's a mean prick, and a guy who calls himself War Child. No surprise, these guys don't get along.
Oh, exactly.
This guy was not. They were not allowed to touch his drum set. I'll tell you that. Right. I don't care what the hell happens. They were not allowed to touch that. But so he does agree to release these 300 guys, and he's going to let them go. So Forrest is going to leave, and he's going to move to Okolona. And he's going to get there on November 24th. Of 1863 to join Lee.
Wow, which is a day before the before the battles of Chattanooga start happening.
And the greatest day in American history.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Okay, but in any case, there's no word that when Forrest got to Okolona that he had a condo made of stona. Be cool if you know what that one, what I meant for that. But regardless, okay, I'm just saying, okay, but he's down here now, okay, and the first thing Forrest is going to do when he gets to Okolona is he's going to recruit. He's really hoping that Lee, is hoping that Forrest's reputation, which really preceded him, is going to really help that recruiting. It's kind of like your football college team gets a brand new hotshot coach and all the kids that want to play for him. That's what he's kind of hoping for.
But Lee is really happy that Forrest has come down to command, come down to join him. And Stephen D. Lee writes him and says, I would feel proud of commanding or cooperating with so gallant an officer as yourself. It's like, dude, what do you like? You're commanding him. You don't need to like suck up to him. Like,
well, he's He's just happy he's got him. Okay. Now, the first thing he's going to do, he's going to recruit. He's going to set up, he's going to set up recruiting seminars, balloons,
Yep.
coffee, the whole deal. He's going to try to sign up people to join his army. What he's going to try to do.
Yep.
But the thing that the challenge is, that he's going to end up with about 600 guys out of Okolona, but he knows the mother lode is in Western Tennessee.
Exactly.
This goes back to Bell, we talked about.
Yep.
Where Tyree Bell pulled 2,000 people out of West Tennessee for Bragg. Forrest also thinks they can go back to Western Tennessee and they can recruit and get that many more guys. Here's the problem, Mary. There's a problem. It's behind Union lines. So what this is going to do is Forrest and Bell, because he wants Bell with him,
Yep.
they're going to end up having to go behind Union lines, recruit under their nose, and then get back. That's part of the problem. That's one problem.
Mm-hmm.
It gets, but wait, there's more. The other problem is this, okay? They're doing this around Christmas time.
Yep.
And that's a big deal, because not only are they going to try to go behind Union lines to recruit people, they're going to do it around Christmas time. So they're going to try to get these men to leave their families around Christmas. It's cold. And they know that if they do leave, they're leaving their children, their wives, whoever, in Union occupied land without them to protect them. So it's actually a really, really tough sell, but Forrest knows it has to be done. So he's going to end up with those 300 guys he started with. He's going to get 300 more in Okolona. And what he's going to do now is he's going to go with Tyree Bell. They're going to go to Western Tennessee and they're going to go get more. We're going to be, and I think it's important we talk a lot about this before the Battle of Okolona, because this is the army that Forrest is going to fight with, and he's going to fight with throughout the war after this.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. These are like raw recruits and stuff like that. And the other thing too is like Davis, in this meeting they had, Davis was like, "Oh yeah, I'll send you those weapons that you need." Davis promises he's going to, and the weapons never arrive. So some of Forrest's men are actually going to go, as we will see, they're going to go into the Battle of Okolona unarmed as well, because Davis never sends those weapons. But as you said, getting back to, like it's around Christmas time and he's got to go recruiting. But, because it's Nathan Bedford Forrest, he's probably not going to have a issue recruiting these men. Because there's a quote here. At the time, West Tennessee was full of little companies from 10 to 30 men willing to fight, but unwilling to go far from home or into the infantry, which is what Forrest said about them. So he knows he's got to keep them close to home, right? Like, he's like, how am I going to get this? Forrest has that reputation, which men would rally around. And he said, I determined to cast my one man said, I was determined to cast my fortunes with the daring and dashing Forrest. He was constantly receiving recruits. Wherever he went, many old and young soldiers joined him just from choice.
Getting these men to leave their homes in that time of year is like selling ribs to a woman with white gloves. That's how impossible this was. But it was a real Herculean task.
Yeah.
It's like trying to get people to join the Indians and play baseball for them. They're never going to. That's how hard it is to recruit.
Bucker.
Just that, I don't, to make it real, so we got to talk about the terrain. Okay, now, let's remember a couple things. One, we're talking winter in Western Tennessee, northern Mississippi. It's November, December, right?
And the weather's not good.
Cold. It's not good. So the separating line between the Feds and the rebels basically was the line that ran along the Mobile and Ohio Railroad, okay, which ran parallel to Mississippi and Tennessee state lines, and ran from Memphis, Tennessee to Corinth, Mississippi, and was heavily defended by the Union. This was kind of that no man's land, right? And this is where Forrest had to go across. So Forrest, as I mentioned, he's got 600 guys, and they need to cross this defended railroad just to get over enemy lines, just to be able to recruit. And so the guy I mentioned before, he wants with him is Tyree Bell, right? Who agrees to go. And Stephen D. Lee says, knock yourself out. You be you. You take who the hell you want.
Stephen D. Lee is going to give Forrest whatever he wants, because Stephen D. Lee is like, I don't know. Did he come across as like a fanboy to you?
I mean, did you study the Battle of Tupelo?
Stephen D. Lee.
I'm just saying, no matter what happens, everything's going to come out great. Put it that way.
Oh, I know. Okay. But I mean, I'm like, Stephen D. Lee is like a Nathan Bedford Forrest fanboy. He hero worships him. He's like, oh my God.
God, but Bell's going to go first is what it's going to do. He's going to try and sneak back into Western Tennessee to his place he calls Camp Bell, which is his recruiting area. That's what he calls it. He's going to make it there, and he's going to quickly spread the word that Nathan Bedford Forrest is coming, okay?
Yeah.
To recruit men for his personal cavalry, as he done in Oklahoma. So you can imagine, how excited people are. An Alabama Mary named Robert E. Curry writes to his wife describing Forrest recruiting tactics. This is back in Oklahoma now, okay?
Yep.
Okolona. General Forrest don't want no one going with him unwilling. If some of us don't pay him a visit in Alton, a Union prisoner war camp, we will be lucky. For I know our leader, the great go-ahead Forrest, is a rush man and he is fond of danger. Okay, so John Johnston, okay, a recruit who he signed on there as well. He says General Forrest is like a steam locomotive, trembling under the pressure of his own awful power, ever ready to move, still only when constrained. So this guy's a bull in a china cabinet. And but
Mm-hmm.
what that does though is it brings people. Don't forget, a lot of these guys they're dealing with Grant and Sherman
Yep.
and all these people, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
them are going to be occupied,
Yep.
especially people in Western Tennessee. They're fired up to have a leader like that. So
Mm-hmm.
on November 29th, Forrest is going to leave Okolona with that small force that we mentioned, those 600 guys, and they're going to head north towards that railroad during that really awful cold shit we talked about, that ice and snow and crap that's hitting the region around this time. So by December 1st, they're already at a place called Ripley, Mississippi, which is about 50 miles south of the Tennessee state line. So
Mm-hmm.
weather notwithstanding, they're moving, okay?
Yep.
To help Forrest sneak past that Union line, Stephen Dill Lee is going to create a diversion further up the railroad track. They're going to make a bunch of noise to get the Union Army who is defending that trail to go and head towards Lee. And by doing that, it's going to take the eyes off of Forrest, that area where he's going to go through Western Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to happen on December 2nd, right? So by the 3rd, Forrest is already crossing the Hatchie River at a place called Boulevard, Tennessee, and he's going to find a ferry boat. It's not funny how life is. He's going to find a ferry
Yep.
boat, and he's able to sneak into Tennessee and move into Jackson, Tennessee, completely undetected of the Union Army. He goes right under their noses. And this is primarily because Stephen Dill Lee is creating that
Well, and
diversion,
it's also
right?
because General Hurlbut is not overly concerned either.
Well, right. But here's the thing about Forrest, okay, is he's thinking one step ahead. He
Yep.
knows that when he's in Western Tennessee, Stephen Hurlbut is going to figure this out. And he's going to know where he crossed. He's going to go defend where he crossed and catch him. So you know what Forrest does? He takes that ferry boat, he moves it
Yep.
because he knows when he crosses, he ain't going that same place. He's going to go southwest. He's going to cross there. We'll talk about that in a little bit, right? So they're going to hide that. They're going to basically hide that ferry boat, and so what'll go on by December 5th? Okay, Forrest is sitting in Jackson, Tennessee, and the recruiting effort is in full motion. He's
Yep.
promising money to all the good basketball players, cars. He's doing whatever he can to recruit. Okay, he has some men recruiting. He has other men keeping a clear eye, looking for federal troops to
Yep.
make sure that they're not watched, because he knows the clock is ticking. He
Mm-hmm.
knows he can't be there forever, right?
Yep.
Most of these recruiting trips take place in the middle of the woods, in ravines, and streams.
It
This is really
sounds
awful
really
paths.
fucking shady.
Just picture him sitting there with a cigarette. Hey, buddy, want to go? You like horses? You want to,
You
you
like
know,
swords? You like guns?
he's
You
in a
wanna,
parking garage, with the lights, all the lights turned on to the one spotlight.
you want to see the world? The world being maybe 25 miles from here.
What do you think of sabers? You like sabers, kid?
And
But
then
so,
there's someone
so
asked him, like, how many men are you looking to recruit? About 1,000,000.
about a million, But the thing about the Forrest mere presence is going to make their jobs completely easy.
Yeah.
Because don't forget too, in these people in Western Tennessee, they're tired of living under Union occupied
Yeah.
territory, which is what they were. So thanks to this, he's going to quickly sign 1,000 guys real quick, despite the reservations of the Christmas time, leaving their families. The other thing that he does is he has to pay for these people out of his own pocket. Because
Yeah.
he
And he is
and
the
he takes
richest man. He's one of the richest men in the Confederacy. Is he not going into the Civil War?
he has that quote. He goes, I went into the army worth $1.5 million. I came out a beggar. That's the quote he said after the war, right? So by all accounts, okay, this is his last. He tapped himself out here, right? So because he's going to write to Joseph E. Johnston of all people, he's going to
Yeah.
write, I'm in great need of money. I've had to advance my quartermaster $20,000 from my pocket to subsist my command so far. So, and the records will show, like we said, when the war is over, he's broke.
Yep.
So he's going to take the last of his personal funds to fund this army, this group of people he's desperately trying to recruit in Western Tennessee to stop what he thinks is coming, which is Sherman coming to Mississippi,
Yeah.
right? So now with this pretty good force, the next task for Forrest is to get these men, and like you mentioned earlier, these men have no weapons, they have no horses.
No.
He has to get these guys back into Tennessee, back over Union lines. Tyree Bell, he's not sitting around on a Friday night aimlessly doing nothing, Mary. He's recruiting as well. Okay. His phone is ringing. Okay. He's going to also recruit 1,000 guys. So by the time Forrest and Bell are going to be heading back into Mississippi,
Yep.
they've got about 2,500 guys.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, they went in with 600, came out with 2,500. That's how good this recruiting trip was, again, around Christmas time.
Yeah.
When these guys don't want to leave their homes in a Union occupied territory who they were desperately afraid of leaving their families with.
Yeah.
He got that many guys.
But
that's how good of recruiters these people are.
Yeah, but you got to wonder, though, if these guys are maybe deciding to join up because of what the result of the battles for Chattanooga and the Battle of Ringgold Gap has been, the fact that Bragg has been driven away from that key city, that maybe they're like, fuck, we got to do something, or these guys are going to come for us too. You know, that, and they know that Vicksburg obviously has already happened, but I think the battles for Chattanooga and Ringgold Gap are probably having an effect on them as well as to why they're deciding to move. But Forrest says in December of 1863, he said, "I am highly gratified with my success so far. Troops and men are flocking to me in all quarters." Like Forrest, basically, as you've talked about, Darren, like he works his ass off to get these recruits, has officers going all over the region to get them. He's got enough to form the 16th, the 18th, the 21st, and the 20th Tennessee Cavalry regiments. Like that is really amazing what he's managed to do. And he does tell Johnson at one point, "Oh, I'll have 8,000 men," which never happens.
Well, the thing about it though is not only does he get 2,500 guys, you know what else he gets? He gets
Cows.
He gets 40 wagons.
Yeah.
He gets 80 mules, 200 pigs, 300 cows, and a partridge in a pear tree. It's Christmas time, so he has to get that too.
Does he get IPAs or anything?
No, some Canadian took them all. But what happens is he ends up with a whole bunch of stuff. Now, it's around this time that the clock runs out and Stephen Hurlbut is going to learn of Forrest's presence in the area. He knew it was a matter of time. Hurlbut finally finds out, and he's going to move quickly to bag him, okay? So Forrest now knows he's got to go. So he's going to start to move this caravan, I guess you want to call it, right? Forrest will have his 1st Brigade under a guy named R.V. Richardson, okay, up in front, followed by Tyree Bell's brigade. Now, that middle brigade is going to have all the wagons because it's going to be the slowest part. So you're going to have all that stuff in the middle, right? And then Forrest himself is going to ride in the rear. Now, Hurlbut is going to try to trap them, like we said. He assumes, like he should, that he's going to leave the same way, right? Now, remember, what Forrest had wisely moved that ferry, that pontoon thing, down the river because he knew he could not go out the same way. He's going to go further southwest, and he's going to cross the Hatchie, and then he's going to cross a place called the Wolf River, right? And it's significantly more dangerous, but he has to do it. He's going to end up moving that ferry to a place called Estranella Crossing.
Yep.
That's where he's going to move it, okay? And Richardson's guys are going to get, the elite element's going to get there the day before Christmas, December 24th, and they're going to set up the ferry, and Forrest's men are going to start to cross the river. But what happens is, you know who finds them is Benjamin Grierson, the Union cavalry guy. He's nearby. He's going to get wind of Forrest crossing, so he's going to send 2 of his regiments under guy Edward Prince down to chase him down. Now, by the time Prince gets to the spot in Estranella Crossing, Forrest has already basically beaten him to it, and they start to cross. But there's going to be a quick little skirmish there. Prince is going to arrive, and he's going to start firing on these Confederate Revs crossing. It's going to cause Richardson to dig in. He's going to send a message back to Tyree Bell, who's going to send men forward. And even though not everyone has weapons, they are able to drive Prince back. At this point, they don't sustain any casualties. The only casualty that happened was Tyree Bell's personal wagon. He doesn't want to cross the ferry, so they're going to try to go right across the water. The water at this time with Estranella Crossing it's wintertime, it's high, it's running fast.
Yeah.
They start going. Guess what happens? It gets capsized. It
Yeah.
flips over, right? So the driver, whatever the teamster, floats away. He's never seen again. They think he assumes he's drowned.
God.
Bell gets stuck, as does the mules pulling this carriage. You know what happens? Forrest
Yep.
sees them. He jumps in the water with the knife and he frees them. So that's what
Well,
happens.
the other thing Forrest does too is one guy said he wasn't going to get into the icy water, and Forrest apparently threw him into the river.
Yeah, well, I guess
God.
so. But by December 27th, Forrest is safely back in Mississippi, back at Holly Springs.
Yep.
Okay, and now he has this new cavalry force, and now he's able to arm and uniform his men. Okay, he gets weapons from Leonidas Polk, who's sitting over in Como, Mississippi. So now he's able to have these 2,500 men armed and organized, right? This is going to be the army now that he's going to use at Okolona,
Mhm.
and that we'll talk about for the rest of this as well as the rest of the war.
And the other thing that Forrest is doing too is he's cutting the telegraph wires as well to fuck things up for the Union. So he's already starting to make life very difficult for them. Garrison basically can't get word out what's going on.
And they're going to get to a place called Oxford, Mississippi, a
Yep.
big college town nowadays, Mary. And I get to tell this real quick story here. Was the story of these 12 deserters, which is a good, very interesting story. Okay,
Yep.
so while they're in Oxford, 12 guys from this new cavalry decide to ditch. They decide to desert.
Yeah.
And like in most cases, they get caught. Okay, Forrest, being Forrest, he wants to have them shot publicly, right?
Yeah.
And it brought like an outrage in the town of Oxford. Everyone came out to beg Forrest not to shoot these kids. Okay, he's nope, they're gonna die. They're gonna get shot. So what he does the day of the execution, he has them dig their own graves. He stands at the foot of the graves and he has the firing squad ready to go.
Mhm.
And he aims the rifles. He's ready, aim. Right before he says fire, he stops and he spares their lives. And he basically says, "Let that be a lesson to you. Next time people who desert, I'm not going to stop." So
Yep.
what does that do? It shows compassion to these 12 guys,
Yep.
but it kind of brings that army cohesive, right?
It
So
raises
what he does,
morale for them too.
exactly. And I can only imagine what's going through these people's heads.
Oh my God. Yeah, like then I've got a quote here from this. There were no more desertions, and the men learned that General Forrest was not cruel, not unnecessarily severe, but they also learned he would not be trifled with. So kind of like, you do as I say, you follow me, but don't fuck around, and we're gonna be okay.
Well, he was a heartless prick, no question.
Oh,
but
he
at this
was.
Moment, but at this moment, I think he realized that he could do more. He could look at the bigger picture and realize he could bring his army closer together by not doing that. He has his cavalry now in place, so he's back with SD Lee now. And this is when William T. Sherman's and his 35,000 man Meridian campaign starts going, right?
It is, yep.
So we're not going to tell the whole story again. There's an episode.
We have
Meridian,
a whole episode about it.
But suffice it to say, Sherman was going to Meridian, Mississippi, and he's going to rip shit up. He's going to burn stuff. He's going to be Sherman. He expected his cavalry commander, a guy we're going to talk a lot about for the rest of this episode, named General William Suey Smith, to basically go along the trail of that Mobile and Ohio Railroad, go east all the way to Corinth, and then work their way down and destroy stuff and meet him in Meridian. And then they're going to do that. That was in a nutshell what Meridian was, okay?
Yep.
He wanted Smith to lure out Forrest, which is he knew Forrest was there at this point, to beat him, and then go to Meridian, and then they were going to join together, have a big campfire, kumbaya, and that was going to be it.
Smith basically has one job, and that is to get General Nathan Bedford Forrest.
Right. So real quick on William Suey Smith, Mary, is another Ohioan, okay? He's born in 1830 in a place called Tarleton, Ohio. He was a career civil engineer, like a lot of the guys. He graduated 6th in his class at West Point.
Yeah,
and
he's
star-studded class of 1853, Mary.
He's quite a talent.
He's in school with Burbsy McPherson and Phil Sheridan and guys like John Bowen. So he is in a star-studded class. But
do you know what he was involved in surveying?
Oh, we do know. I was going to talk about that. He helped survey that bridge that crosses to Canada that you like to cross by Niagara Falls.
Yeah, it's probably one of the bridges I crossed at either Peace or Queenston Lewiston. So I think it's one of those ones that.
He probably doesn't anticipate the extra weight of those beer cans you throw out the window, but that's okay. He already figured that out. But when the war breaks out, okay, he's going to join the 13th Ohio. By June of 1861, he's already a colonel. Okay, so he's a rising star in the Union Army.
He also looks like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
He does, okay.
Just saying.
He actually got his star on April 16th, 1862, and he commanded the division of Vicksburg in the 16th Corps, which is why he was there, right? Once the Meridian Campaign is going, he's named to command that cavalry force under Stephen Hurlbut, we just mentioned. And what he does over the next few weeks is really going to define him personally, which is very unfortunate. Sherman's going to get underway. Smith was to leave Memphis, okay, with this. He has 7,200 guys. He's got
Yep.
a lot of guys, and they're well armed. Okay, they
This
got
is,
good shit.
you could not ask for a better cavalry than what William Soy Smith has. These are guys that have been handpicked from the best cavalrymen, supposedly in the Union Army, but obviously it's just what's in the West, right? Like they're not going to go all over the place. But they've got great weapons. They've got Sharps carbines, they've got Colt repeaters, and they've got Navy sixes. Their horses are very well rested. They're ready to go. Each man is carrying an extra set of horseshoes. They've got ammo. They've got 5 days rations and blacksmith equipment. Like all these guys are ready to go. And Sherman, in his memoirs, described them as the best and most experienced troops in the service. And Smith has Benjamin Grierson, who we've discussed earlier. He's second in command, and Sherman refers to Grierson as the best cavalry officer I had. So these are all guys that they are like, you could not ask for a better setup to do what Sherman wants, which is to get Nathan Bedford Forrest. So Smith has to get Forrest, do a lot of damage in North Mississippi, and then go 250 miles to meet Sherman in Meridian. With the timeline that Sherman's giving him, that should be possible. But as we are going to see, that does not happen.
And Grierson's coming off that fantastic Vicksburg campaign that he did, and he's a guy who's got a big name. But for whatever reason, Smith is late to leave Memphis. Okay, and that's going to be what dooms him. Well, one of the things that's going to doom him, but that's what gets him first. The other thing about him is he suffered from really bad arthritis in his hands at such a young age, which affected him later.
Yeah,
and who knows how that plays into it. But he'll actually, when this is all over, he'll leave the army by the end of the year. He'll be done.
Yeah,
right?
But the thing is, like Sherman, the one thing I want to mention is Sherman sets this up for Smith. Sherman says that Forrest was a constant threat to our railway communication in eastern Tennessee, and I committed the task to General William Soy Smith. And Sherman says, I explained to him personally the nature of Forrest as a man and of his peculiar force. So he's probably explaining, like, dude, these are like just like guys that are like, they've been recruited off their farms and they're probably really angry because of the shit we've done. So he tells Smith that in his route, he was sure to encounter Forrest, who always attacked with a vehemence for which he must be prepared, and that after he repelled the first attack, he must in turn assume the most determined offensive, overwhelm him, and utterly destroy his whole force. I knew that Forrest could not have more than 4,000 cavalry. Sherman's going into this, setting this up for Soy Smith, like, dude, basically you're going up against like a fucking demon. Good luck with that. Like, I can't imagine what was going through Soy Smith's head when Sherman's like, you're going to have to do this and you're going to have to do this because Forrest is going to do this to you.
Well, people talk about the Meridian Campaign as kind of the dry run to the March of the Sea.
Yeah.
This is a 45,000 man invading force. This is more than just a little expeditionary force. Meridian's a big deal. So Smith, for the most part, we're going to talk about him, okay, with what he does. Every single thing people accuse Sherman of doing, Smith does.
Oh, and he does it like 10 times worse, I think.
We'll talk about it in more detail, but what Smith does going to Mississippi is brutal. Okay, and we're going to talk about that. So when he finally does get moving, he's going to straddle that Mobile and Ohio Railroad. He's going to move right down the railroad. He's going to start at Collierville. Okay, he's going to move east along that path, and he's going to go towards Corinth. Now, they're supposed to follow the railroad tracks in south. When they hit Corinth, they're going to go south. They're going to go to Tupelo. They're going to go past Okolona, then to West Point, and they're going to eventually meet at Meridian. That's kind of the path they're going to go, okay? Mm-hmm. Remember, too, he's going right through this breadbasket we talked about. That's why it's an issue. They're going through this Mississippi prairie, which the Confederate desperately needs to hold on to. This cavalry force that Smith is sending through there is going to be the strongest cavalry force that's ever going to go through that area in the entire war, right?
Yeah.
Smith has 3 objectives, okay? He has to destroy as much of the Mobile and Ohio Railroad and anything of value as he can possibly get. He has to defeat Forrest, and then he has to meet up with Sherman. That's his 3 things. He's got 3 jobs, Mayor, okay? Now, despite having this huge numerical advantage, Soy Smith was very scared of Nathan Bedford
Oh, and
Forrest.
he
Okay,
doesn't
and his
leave until February the 14th, and he's actually supposed to meet Sherman in Meridian on February the 18th. You got to
so
go
and, yeah,
250 miles and do this shit. You're good luck.
well, that's what we said. For whatever reason, he left late, and what he does, right?
Well, he's waiting
But
for Waring to get there, right? And Waring shows up
but
late, and his horses need to rest and all that other shit.
But the countryside Smith's cavalry is going through is going to be extremely plush and rich in supplies. It reminds me a lot of when those Confederates went into Pennsylvania in June of 1863 and talked about how wonderful Pennsylvania looked.
Yep.
That they went to this place. It was called the Land of Egypt, is what the locals called
Yep.
it. And the soldiers' stories, like I said, are very similar to seeing these big farms, all this beautiful territory, all these supplies, cows, all this stuff. But while on this march, Smith and his men destroyed whatever they could possibly find. They burned cotton, warehouses, they destroyed railroad tracks as they straddled east along this railroad track. Now, the destruction around this area of Egypt, Mississippi, was so bad that it's virtually is nothing
There's
exists
nothing
anymore from
left.
that era. It's all gone. One story that comes out of this is a story of a rich farmer in Egypt named Isaac Jarman. Okay, Isaac Jarman, like many of the locals, he chose to stay back at his farm and defend his land. He was going to stay back with his family. He didn't want to leave because he was going to get plundered. Smith and his guys are bearing down on his property. Now, Jarman is going to stand in his front yard, surrounded by his family, when the troopers arrived. And he's going to start shouting at them to get the hell off my property, get off my lawn, all the stuff you yell at the neighbors, okay? All those things, right? It's going to get really heated. One of the officers is going to order him shot in front of his family, which he does. Okay, so
Wow.
Jarman's going to be shot. One of his nieces is going to catch him, cradle his head as he's bleeding, and the ground's frozen. It's a really
Oh my
shitty
God.
scene. The men are then ordered to go inside the house and plunder the house and then burn it. Okay, that's what they're going to do. Now, when the men are inside, guess what they find inside the house? A Masonic apron. Okay,
Wow.
so they bring it out to the officer who ordered him shot, and the officer said, and I quote, "If I knew he was a Mason, I would not have ordered him killed." But you know what he does? He burned the house anyway.
Oh my
So, so,
God.
so the Jarman farm in most of Egypt would be completely destroyed by Suey Smith along with that railroad track. And so they're marching along. You want to talk about a march to the sea? That's what this was.
Well, I think too, this, when you think of stories like that, and just, we're going to talk more about this in a little bit, but I think this part of the Meridian campaign, it somehow gets down to Georgia. Obviously, it's going to be in the newspapers, but I think this is what Soy Smith is doing here, is why Sherman has the reputation he does going into the March to the Sea. Is
Oh, it's
is
no question.
this is
But
what does it.
but you know what this other does too to Suey Smith? This slows him down.
Oh, big
So
time.
so while he's supposed to be dealing with Forrest, he hasn't got to him yet. But while he's supposed to be getting to Sherman, his men are going hog wild and they're getting this bloodlust and they're
Oh,
destroying everything.
they
So
do.
so so he's supposed to meet up with Sherman on Valentine's Day,
Yep.
February 14th, right? Also
Yep.
known as Hancock's birthday, Mary.
As
And
well as the
what
day that
else?
William Tecumseh Sherman passed
Yeah, he
away.
done. He done. Not that day, not this year, but later on. Okay,
I know.
but as he's going through this, it's slowing him down. They're gathering
Yep.
supplies, they're gathering wagons, they're just burning stuff. While this is all going on, Smith is going to order is going to order Benjamin Grierson, okay, to
Yep.
send troops towards the town of Aberdeen, Mississippi, which is just southeast of Okolona. So he's sending troops out to kind of scout. The reason is he wants to go to a local river called the Tobigby River and to
Yep.
see if it could be crossed. That's what he wants to do, and to get to the Aberdeen area. And when Grierson gets to Aberdeen, he starts to notice that there's Forrest cavalrymen in the area. Okay, so by now, Smith's cavalry has arrived in a town called Prairie, Mississippi, which is about 16 miles south of Okolona and 8 miles southwest of Aberdeen. So they're moving along. They're
Yep.
getting there slowly but surely. From there, they're going to move to the town of West Point, about 20 miles south of Prairie. So you can see the Smiths' destruction is slowing them as they're going, but
Yep.
they are getting there. This movement was he's starting to move out because the movement is being driven by fear that he's lost so much time to meet Sherman.
Oh, big
Okay,
time. I think he gets so caught up with what he's doing that, and like he was delayed waiting for Waring's men and all that, and they were way delayed getting going. But just, a few quotes of what's going on here. As they move through the area, like Smith's soldiers, one quote said they seem to be possessed by pyromania. That sounds a lot like Sherman on the March to the Sea. And another one, the sky was red with flame of burning corn and cotton. One of the Confederates, Private R.R. Hancock, who was with Forrest of the 2nd Tennessee, he wrote, the night the whole country northward was illuminated by burning homesteads, cotton gins, corn houses, and stockyards, inspiring the Confederates with a passionate resolution to do all in the power of men to punish such an unmanly, heathenish method of warfare. Even the Confederates now are starting to notice what Soy Smith is doing, and they're getting riled up about it. I think that says a lot right there when you look forward to the March to the Sea and some of the things that we hear about that and how much of historical memory plays into the March to the Sea and how a lot of what we're hearing here sounds a lot like that.
It does, but it's around here when Smith realizes, shit, I better get going. So what he's going to do, he's going to order Grierson to meet him at West Point. Now, the problem they're going to run into is they sort of put themselves into a trap unbeknownstly. So what they did was Smith is afraid of Forrest is nearby because he knows now Forrest isn't far away. Other problem he has is he backed himself into this area of Mississippi that's surrounded by rivers and swamps and streams that's overflowing because of the winter, right?
Yeah.
So he's vulnerable to an attack now. He put himself into a fishbowl just by where he was. So for Smith, that pucker effect is fully going in now, right?
Yep.
He's starting to realize, okay, Nathan Bedford Forrest is not far. I'm in a place right now where I'm backed up to every river in Mississippi and every stream that's all flowing. He knows he's in trouble. So what happens? A group of Forrest guys, they're going to cross that Tom Bigby River, and they're going to be, and they see the feds, they're going to begin to follow them and stalk them and shadow them. So keep an eye on them, right? And they're going to stay on that right flank. Now, Forrest isn't ready to fight yet. He knows he's got a 3-to-1 man disadvantage, all right? But he also knows that he's got them in that watery area, that if he is going to attack, this is the place to attack. So February 20th, 1864, Suey Smith is sitting in his headquarters at West Point, okay? Mississippi, not New York, Mary, okay? So he's already a week behind, and he was supposed to meet Sherman, earlier, and he ain't getting there, right?
Yeah, so Sherman's probably like, what the fuck?
So Colonel Jeffrey Forrest, the younger brother of Nathan Bedford Forrest, is going to have his men, he's going to position his men about 3 miles southwest of West Point in a bridge called Ellis Bridge. It's modern day 50 if you're from Mississippi, okay? And the younger Forrest wants to hold this bridge. Now, that night, Smith is realizing he's starting to see the writing on the wall. So he thinks it's probably best to get the hell out of here and start to withdraw from West Point because he's hearing these reports of Forrest men are slowly coming in now. And he knows that he's been slowed by these friggin' supplies and the men he can't control anymore. They're plundering everything, okay? And he also knows he's pinned with all these rivers around him. This has bad juju written all over it. He knows everything. I mean, he's just sitting there going like, holy shit. Someone drank Jobu's rum on this campaign.
Oh my God, I was thinking about Jobu earlier with this. It's crazy.
But so on February 21st, okay, he's going to retreat back north now to Okolona. And now Smith, he's knowing that Forrest is at Ellis Bridge, is going to need to attack him to give him his army time to escape. We see it all the time. You throw some guys at him, slow them down. And he's going to order his men to attack and try to hold Jeffrey Forrest there. This will be known as the Battle of West Point, also the Battle of Ellis Bridge. The battle is going to blast away for about 3 hours or so under Jeffrey Forrest and a guy named Robert McCullough, okay? They're going to be able to force Smith's men back, which is no big deal because they were falling back anyway. What this battle does, though, this marks the beginning of when they turned Smith back. So there's a monument there, and it makes a big deal about it. Smith is going to start moving back north now, and what Nathan Bedford Forrest is going to do, he's going to nip at his heels and attack his rear guard all the way back. And that's where it's going to culminate in the Battle of Okolona.
And Smith is just going to, he's finally got it in his head. I think it's a combination of what, Sherman has said to him, maybe his own paranoia. And apparently his arthritis started flaring up again in his hands, but he is scared. And I think too, again, going back to what Sherman said, like basically Sherman's like, oh yeah, he's going to attack you, but then you're going to have to counterattack because he's going to want to attack you again. Like Smith is like, who the fuck are you putting me up against? And why aren't you going up against him? Because you clearly know him better than I do.
So the next day is February 22nd, and this is the day of the Battle of Okolona. So Suey Smith, his men are back at Okolona as Forrest's men continue to harass
Yeah.
them. Forrest is going to rout Grierson's men while they're falling back. So, and they're going to, Grierson's guys are going to go on a O.O. Howard like mad panic run to get the hell out of Dodge. They're going to turn, they're going to
That's our
run.
OO reference.
Yeah, unfortunately, but they are going to rush back to a place called Pontotoc Road, which is continually
Yep.
furthering going north, right?
That's
And
where
they're being
Forrest
hit.
wanted them to go too.
Right. They're being hit on their savannah and their flanks
Ooh.
every step along the way. Okay. They are. So Forrest is basically got them in a cauldron pushing them towards this
Yep.
Pontotoc Road. Now, Smith's going to get there, okay, and they're going to arrive at a town called Prairie Mount. Fun fact: it no longer exists, Mary. It's long gone,
Oh,
and it's about
why.
it's about 6 miles from Okolona. Now, here the terrain changes. Instead of flat ground, you start to have some undulations. You start to have some hills that's going to roll. Okay?
Rolling hills.
Yep. And so what's going to happen is here, Smith is going to realize that they might be able to make a stand here. So they're going to get to a place called Ivy's Hill, okay, which is surrounded by a woodlot. Here, Smith thinks this is a place that he can make a stand to at least try to stop Forrest, who's been on his ass the whole way.
Yeah.
The feds are going to dig in. They're going to throw up rail split fences. They're going to they're going to barricade the roads with trees to stop it from coming. They're going to wait. Okay. Now, leading the rebel assault, inevitably the rebels are going to come. They're following them. They're going to be led by Colonel Jeffrey Forrest again.
Yeah.
He's going to be coming. Okay. Now, real quick about Forrest. Okay. Forrest's father, Nathan Bedford Forrest, and Jeffrey Forrest died right after Jeffrey was born. Okay.
Yeah.
So Nathan Bedford Forrest really
He was 16 years
Jeffrey,
older than him.
Right. He raised him like a son. Okay. He was the baby. Jeffrey was the baby,
Yep.
and he was the apple of Nathan Bedford Forrest's eye. He was. Okay. Jeffrey is going to lead this cavalry up this ridge towards this Union line, Ivy's Hill, across a field from a tree line. Okay. In the woods are going to be dismounted federal troops waiting about 300 yards away, and they're going to wait for the Rebs to approach. And when they do, they fire a wicked volley at them. Okay. Jeffrey is going to be at the front of the line.
Yep.
He's going to be hit in the neck. When he does, he's going to fall, and the troops are going to scatter and fall back. Okay. The younger Forrest is going to spend the next 5 minutes of his life choking to death on his own blood.
Yeah.
Okay. Until he inevitably dies, right? Nathan Bedford Forrest is not far away. He's going to hear that Jeffrey has fallen, and he's going to gallop to the site, and he's going to get off his horse, he's going to cradle Jeffrey in his arms, and he's going to be crying, tears in his eyes, the broken voice, Jeffrey, Jeffrey. Okay. And he's going to be absolutely devastated. Okay. He's going to kiss his brother on the forehead. He's going to lay him down with tears in his eyes. He's going to call to a guy named Major John Strange to take care of his brother's body.
Yep.
Okay. At that moment, he snaps.
Oh, he said he
falls
just
off the cracker. Okay.
it said he just goes into this kind of like, it drove him to temporary insanity that, you know, his brother had just died in his arms, and he's said to have killed 5 federal troops, and his horse at this point gets shot from under him, so he gets another one and it also gets shot, and that's when they give him his final, his main horse was King Philip, and they finally give him King Philip. And King Philip is described as being completely fearless, although when it's not a battle, he was kind of like, oh, whatever, laid back. But this is a horse that, and apparently horses are colorblind, but this horse could see blue, and he went, he would bite federal soldiers, he would stomp on them and everything. He was kind of that extension of Nathan Bedford Forrest's personality. But Forrest just kind of goes on this rampage after his brother has been killed.
So he jumps on the horse, he pulls out his saber, and one of his troops said afterwards that Forrest's behavior was, quote, so rash as to savor madness, right? Forrest, he's going to jump on the horse, and they're going to go. And they're going to go full speed at these federal lines. Smith's men are going to turn, and they are going to run like freaking hell. Okay.
Yep.
And Forrest is going to have 120 of his men on horseback chasing them. So they're going to keep going. A mile or so up the road, the feds are going to try yet again to establish a defensive line to try to stop them again. They have 500 guys on this line to stop these 120. Now, Forrest is going to attack them anyway because he is a blood simple sea red.
Oh, he's got
You know, this
Temporary
is a pat.
insanity, I think, because his
This
brother's been killed, right?
this is a Pat's loss to the Bills anger situation. That's how mad they are.
Oh,
Okay,
I know all
so
about that.
this is gonna this is gonna lead to one of the single bloodiest hand-to-hand combat battles in the entire Civil War. Okay, now the Rebs are gonna get pushed back. They're gonna get reinforcements from McCullough, whose nickname was Black Bob, by the way, in case
I
you're
know,
curious.
yeah.
Okay,
Like, what the fuck?
um, he's just so you know, Black Bob. He got hit in the head. He had a bloody bandage. You know
Yep.
what he does? He pulls it off and he holds it up to lead his men.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was reading that. That's
right.
crazy.
All I could think of is like Edward Cross or Henry Heath or one of those guys,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And he's going to use that as his guide on as his flag. Must have been cool to see, actually.
Yep.
Think about it. And they're gonna keep hitting him. A Union member of the 4th Tennessee Cavalry, Union guy, Mary. His name is Edward Sergeant Alexander Brandon. He's going to be killed because he's going to jump on a mule to escape. You know what the
Yep.
mule does? Runs right for the Confederate lines. They
Yep.
shoot him anyway. Okay, he's one of 11 dead, along with 10 unknowns still buried there. There's still gravestones up there, right? But Smith's men are just about done. When McCullough's guys hits, when Black Bob hits, they're done. And you mentioned before, Forrest is going to keep going. He's going to have 3 horses shot. His first horse is going to take 4 bullets till he finally falls.
Yep.
He's going to jump on a second one. It's going to be killed instantly with a shot in the head. And King Philip, his third that you mentioned, is going to jump on. He's going to get hit as well, but he's going to survive the battle as well as survive the war. But Smith ain't done yet. He's going to fall back one last time.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's halfway between Okolona and that Pennaatuck, and they're going to be driven back again. And by now, it's getting dark out. Forrest is starting to run out of ammo, and he finally decides to call it quits because his men are just like, dude, no
We're
more.
done.
We've been going. So he's like, so they're pretty much done. Suey Smith is completely, and his men are beaten, and they are freaking stunned at this point. What they don't forget, they started with 7,200 hand-picked, well-armed, well-fed men who were going up against guys a third of their size
that have just been recruited. A lot of them have just been recruited,
and they were beaten to a pulp. They end up retreating all the way back to Memphis, and they are miserable. You can only imagine. They are panic-stricken.
Yep.
Most of these men are both beaten in mind and in spirit. Okay, Smith included. Right? They are done. Now, Smith's men. Okay, they lost 400 men. They lost an amazing 1,500 horses in this thing. That's a lot.
Okay? That's a lot. That's a lot to replace. I mean, that's horses. That's crazy.
The Confederates lost just 150 guys, but of course the most significant being Colonel Jeffrey Forrest.
Yeah.
But the thing about it though is Smith is never going to recover from this.
He's not.
Because we mentioned before, he leaves the army soon later and he's done. But Sherman goes to his grave hating him for this.
Oh, he does. And there's a really great, Sherman's got a lot in his memoirs about this. He said the object of the Meridian expedition was to strike the roads inland to paralyze the rebel forces, that we could take from the defense of the Mississippi River the equivalent of the corps of 20,000 men to be used in the next Georgia campaign, and this was actually done. But then he said, I wanted to destroy General Forrest, who was an irregular force of cavalry and constantly threatening Memphis and the river above, as well as our routes of supply in Middle Tennessee. In this we failed utterly, because General W. Sawyer Smith did not fulfill his orders, which were clear and specific, as contained in my letter of instructions to him on January the 27th. And then he goes on to say, General Smith never regained my confidence as a soldier, though I still regard him as the most accomplished gentleman and a skillful engineer. Since the close of the war, he has appealed to me to relieve him of that censure, but I could not do it because it would falsify history. But
he tries to let bygones be bygones, and Sherman goes, go screw.
I'm wondering if it's just because of what the destruction that Sawyer Smith did was more than what Sherman wanted, and that's why he had this reputation going into the March to the Sea. That here comes the Red Devil or whatever, right?
I don't think it's any more than the fact that he wanted Forrest.
Oh, he absolutely wanted
Forrest. I think he knew, because he had that quote when Forrest was in Western Tennessee recruiting. Okay, Sherman knew he was recruiting up there, and he didn't care. He said, for every man Forrest recruits, he will need one to guard him. Because he didn't think those men were going to be any good. He thought they were going to be garbage, these green troops. And it turns out that they weren't. Now, this is going to be a big part of his reputation in Mississippi and Tennessee.
Hmm.
A lot comes from this, but at the end of the day, what he has here is Smith getting absolutely scuttled and destroyed and really screwing up the Meridian, primarily for the fact that he got too over his head in the destruction and the pillaging.
He just got
And
too caught up in that. And that's what, and the other thing too is he actually writes Grierson at one point during this campaign. Smith was really embarrassed by what his soldiers were doing. And he said, I am deeply pained to say that the operation has been disgraced by incendiarism of the most shocking kind, meaning my men are out of control and I don't know how to deal with them.
and so that was a big part, But Colonel Jeffrey Forrest, he gets when he dies, he gets buried in Aberdeen. He had a
Yeah.
fiance or a wife, I don't know what it was, but
Yeah.
he gets buried there for a while. He gets moved to Memphis, but his gravestone's still there. You can go
Oh,
visit his empty
wow.
grave if you want to go see Jeffrey Forrest, whatever. But I mean, at the end of the day, what this did, this whole thing for Sherman was simply to really knock out the defenses on the way to Atlanta. And it
Mm.
ended up being exactly what he wanted to do. But the one thing he didn't get a chance to do was he didn't get a chance to take out Nathan Bedford Forrest because of bad leadership by Suey Smith,
Yep.
who turned out to be a real bad guy in this campaign. He really, really did. And he went overboard and it cost him. And he put himself into a bad situation with the terrain, and he led the lamb to the slaughter right into Forrest's lap, and Forrest went at him. Don't forget, 7,200 men versus 2,500 green troops,
Yep.
okay, who just got their weapons not long before that. And he's able to pursue them, and he's able to slaughter them and to drive them back. So really at the end of the day, it's it really cements the legacy of Forrest in that region,
It
and really
does.
and it literally ends the career of William Sewey Smith, who at that point, don't forget, sixth in West Point, class of 53, a rising star in the Army. This is a guy who got that position ahead of Grierson, who had that great campaign in Vicksburg. That's
Yep.
who this guy was. And he got a little over his head,
Yep.
and it cost him.
And Gerson is the one that gets placed in command after this. Union Colonel Waring, he had this to say of it. The retreat to Memphis was very disheartening and almost panic-stricken flight in great disorder and confusion. The escort and part of the 12th Kentucky that were under Forrest drove our 7,000 men without difficulty. This expedition filled every Union man with burning shame, while it gave Forrest the most glorious moment of his career. As you just said, like this is Forrest's shining moment in the Civil War. But I think too, you have to remember that these recruits that he's just got, when he was recruiting them around Christmas time, they have just learned that Chattanooga has fallen to the Union,
Mhm.
and that's a huge thing. Like, you're gonna go if you know that place has fallen. And I think that is probably a lot of the reason why these men went, because they knew
Mhm.
that, as of, you have these battles happening November 25th to, I think it's the 29th, that Ringgold Gap happens. And that city is gone. Bragg is retreating. He's starting to go into Georgia. He's headed towards Dalton, that they've lost that city and they're realizing, holy shit, the Union Army's here. We got to do something. They are probably more than ready to rally around Forrest for that
Mhm.
reason.
I mean, at the end of the day, Sherman's going to get to Atlanta anyway, and
Yeah.
it's going to make a lot. It's going to make a lot of it move. But what it really does, though, it does show that you can have an undermanned army
Mm-hmm.
that you can, if you fight viciously and you pick your spots, you can make, and
Absolutely.
you have a really good, inspiring leader in that situation. You can do a lot. So
Yeah. Well,
I think
the other
Oklahoma's a
time that
good.
that happens, that's what
I've got a
happens
lot of
at
history.
that's what happens at Ringgold Gap.
Yeah,
Claiborne's
it happened.
absolutely outnumbered, and he beats back Hooker, and he's able to, hold back the Union long enough for Bragg to
Yeah.
get those trains
Mhm.
close enough to Dalton that they have their supply and all that. So
Mhm.
absolutely, like if you've got the right person in command, you can do it.
I think I think Okolona is really an understudy, underappreciated
Yep,
battle.
it is.
It's really the Meridian campaign that the part of it that people don't really talk a lot about. If you're from that part of Mississippi, the Egypt area in Okolona, of course you're going to talk about it. But at the end of the day, it really tells a great story. So I'm glad we did this one. I'm
Me
glad we kind
too.
of finished off the Meridian campaign. So it's fun to talk about this. And I think we're ready to move on from Mary. So what do you think?
I think so too. I just want to say, I think that, what happens in the Meridian campaign, especially looking closer at Okolona with what Soy Smith does, clearly what he did got in the newspapers would have been read about in Georgia, would have been read about by people that are going to be along where Sherman's march to the sea, as rumors and word spreads quickly, even in that time. So I think what Soy Smith did probably factors a lot into the reputation that Sherman had going into the March to the Sea.
I think it does. It is in the back of their minds because they're thinking, here
Yeah.
we come again, same guy.
This is what
And
he's
I
going
think,
to do. When you think about the fact that, certain towns were left with just, I think it was was it Little Egypt was left with just 2 houses standing after he'd been there.
yeah, Egypt and prayer were just gone forever. So,
Yeah.
what's coming up for us next, Mary? What's next?
So next we are doing an episode. We are doing part 1 of, because March is Women's History Month, we are going to be looking a little bit more at women in the Civil War. We are going to be doing part 1 of, female spies and soldiers in the Civil War. We're going to be doing that next week. And then we have a kind of sort of a secret episode that we're going to be doing. We're not going to release the topic just yet. But yes, we're going to be doing that. And then after that, we're going to be doing part 2 of female spies and soldiers as well. Also, our roundtable is going to be, again, apologies, it's going to be pushed back by a week, so it will not be the 16th. I believe it will be the 24th, just because we have some stuff going on and all that. So we're going to push that back, and we'll let you guys know the date for that as well. So yeah, that's what we got going on. We got a couple episodes for Women's History Month. Oh yeah, as well. March, we are in a book club month for us. So our book this month is Nameless and Faceless Women of the Civil War by Lisa Samia. It's a book of Civil War poetry about women. We will be having our book club meeting on March the 30th at 6 o'clock via Zoom. So if you would like to sign up for that, info@civilwarbreakfastclub.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, that's a good story, I think. I think we told the story pretty well.
We did.
So we will move off to other things. So, Mary, great episode by you. Always fun studying this stuff with you as well. You certainly always know your shit, which is always fun. So, excellent. All right. So, any final words from you, Fincharu, before we head off to the wild blue yonder?
Well, thank you for being the awesome podcast partner that you are. And and thanks to all our listeners for your support these 76 episodes.
76. We are on to 77. We're going to talk about some female spies, which will be great to talk about that. Have a lot of fun talking about that. So off we go. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We appreciate the support. We will see you all later, and have a great week. Have a great weekend. And off we go. And don't forget, he had a condo made of stona.
See y'all later.